What if the problem isn't you? What if you're in the wrong room? My suspicion? You're not broken and you don't need to be fixed. You have outgrown where you are. Let's get more space and freedom to redesign the life you deserve. Welcome to the Reinvention Room. I'm Allison Hare, coach for ambitious women making big changes, and we are rethinking everything we've been taught. Part pop culture, part real talk, and all smarter ways to live life on your own terms. Okay, this is something different. Okay, so now that the podcast is called Reinvention Room, we are kind of reinventing it all. And so I am so excited and proud to welcome Danielle Laughlin, my good friend, onto the podcast. Welcome, Danielle.
Hey, Allison, thanks so much. Happy to be here.
So check this out. So Danielle and I this morning, we got together, we went dancing, we went to go have some tea afterwards, and we're just catching up. And I was telling her about the Netflix special, the documentary that just came out called Don't Die, about Bryan Johnson. And what happened? Danielle, had you ever heard, do you know what this is?
No. I mean, some of the terms you used, I was like, okay, I've kind of heard biohacking or, things like that. But I am not familiar with this guy. And I definitely was very interested in what you were telling me about him.
Well, what I was starting to tell you about, because as I started to explain it, you know how I get so worked up over this. I thought, Danielle, what if we hold that thought and we have this conversation live on the podcast? So here we are.
Yes. Well, you started to go down the differences between a few different distinctions that I didn't know existed in this world. And that's where it was like, oh, maybe we should hold this. And I was like, okay, yes, let's do that, because it seems like there's a lot here. And I'm sure I'm not the only person who doesn't know what this is about.
Yeah, this happens a lot in my world too, because I'm just kind of down the rabbit hole on a lot of different zeitgeists that are happening there. And what I thought was so interesting about this, I've been following Bryan Johnson for, I don't know, probably over a year. So the concept about this guy was really a tech millionaire, and was the founder of Braintree, which had partnered with Venmo, which I think got sold to eBay. So, this massive technology entrepreneur. And he grew up in the Mormon faith and left the Mormon religion, became this big tech bro guy, this tech founder, and was deeply suicidal at the time. He was overweight, wasn't feeling good. When he left the church, his family, he got divorced, and his family and many of his kids, he was excommunicated. So he doesn't really have a relationship with them. What Bryan Johnson is known for is that he has been implementing this protocol to figure out, can he push his body to the point where he never dies? Never dies. Could you imagine?
Yeah, I don't think I want that end or unend.
But that's the thing. Do you want, what is your view on aging?
For me, I don't want to live forever. I think we already have so much life to live, assuming, we don't undergo some unforeseeable circumstance. So, but with modern medicine, you can really live a long time, even if you're not being terribly intentional about what you're doing. And I know that because I have a 95-year-old grandmother, and she's not what, the gurus would tell you she didn't do the things to be where she is because of what the gurus tell you to do. She is that way because she has dietary restrictions, being a diabetic. So she can't really, consume sugars and alcohols and things like that we know are definitely not healthy. And so I think, yeah, I mean, if you can get to an age like that without trying too hard, um, I don't know that I would want to go much further because, you know, your cognitive abilities will decline as far as we know. I mean, and maybe that's the point of what he's doing. And I guess if your cognitive ability does not decline, um, then okay, maybe that's a different situation. But it's almost like it was the movie you told me about with Demi Moore, where she was taking the pill. I even forget what it's called. I actually did
The
watch it, but
substance. The substance.
yes, the substance.
Did you watch
And
it?
yes, we watched it.
You
It
saw the
was,
movie? Oh,
yeah, it was intense. It was a lot. It was a lot. But it's that idea of you can't escape your own mind. And if you are the person that's going to be 150 years old and everyone else around you is not, then what kind of life?
so like at the onset, I totally agree with you. And I even think I never even thought about like being a prisoner of your own mind. That even if your body was going on, you know, I visited my father today. My father is 96 years old. He suffers from dementia. He lives in a memory care facility. And like walking through the facility to go to where his room is, there's like this common area, right? And there are people that they're literally just sitting there like vegetables, watching TV together. Some of them are in a really bad state, like they can't feed themselves. They're like hunched over like this. And of course we see this and we're like, fuck no, I don't want to get old. You know, this is awful. And you know, the cost involved, all of those things. So how controversial is it that there is this man who was at one point deeply, deeply suicidal and started to do some experiments where he essentially has used his body like a guinea pig to try what would happen if you were to live life perfectly. You know, like if you were to rearrange your life and your existence and the choices that you made and the way that he describes it. And there, again, there's a new Netflix documentary called Don't Die. I'm sure if you haven't heard about it, you have heard, you will. It's going to be everywhere. It's so controversial. It's so thought provoking. It's such an incredible conversation starter. And in this documentary, he was talking about, and I've heard him on Rich Roll. It was a really fascinating podcast episode with him where he's so misunderstood and he's so vilified in many, many circles. And in some, they think he's a god. They think he is the second coming of Jesus, you know? And he sometimes makes I don't know if it's tongue in cheek references to, you know, Jesus hasn't come back in 2000 years, but I was able to reverse aging, you know, it's
Right.
unbelievable. So what happens is he started with the concept of the longevity of when I go shopping, like at the grocery store, my mind is choosing these foods, right? My mind is choosing, you know, this is going to taste good, is going to, whatever it is. Maybe they're chips, maybe they're not good for you, but it's all my mind. And he is saying that his mind is a very naughty boy. His mind is not, you know, our minds are not keeping us healthy. And the concept was when he was consulting with a longevity expert is what if you had all of your organs measured where you let your body tell you what you wanted versus your mind kind of destroying us. So you think, Danielle, there are so many people that struggle with addiction. We all do, whether it is social media, whether it is alcohol, whether it is food, whether it's shopping, sex, porn, whatever it is, gambling. We all live with a certain type of addiction. So what would it be like if we let our bodies do the driving? And so he is known as literally like a Guinness Book World Record holder of being the most measured man on earth, meaning he has electrodes and things measuring and calculating and things hooked up to his organs and, different tracking devices in his body. Can you imagine?
No, I can't, but I'm grateful that somebody's willing. I mean, if you're willing to be the guinea pig, I think that's amazing because I believe we'll learn a lot. And we do know that there is the connection between the gut and the actual brain. And your brain will be very naughty if your gut is very naughty because your gut has been trained to want certain things. And I think that that science is already there. So if we have someone who's willing to take the things and do the things and be prodded, more power to him.
Well,
I mean,
think about it
I hope
this way.
he's onto something, I will say. Like, I hope he's onto something here. I do see that there's a little bit of a slippery slope because when is a good enough life a good enough life? When is the existence fulfilling enough to not need to prolong it? That I feel like that's more the challenge I have with it than the ethics of him doing it. I mean, it's his body, so I don't see ethical challenges there. I think the challenge for me is more, is this a healthy mental pursuit? Is it a healthy psychological pursuit?
But I wonder if it isn't. Like the critique on Bryan Johnson are a lot. Like there's so much, as you can imagine, doing something this controversial where at first blush, you're like, this guy is a nut job, right? Like who is going to do that? We've been dying for as long as we've been here,
Right.
like it's the one thing that is inevitable,
one thing
that
we all have in
death and
common.
taxes. What?
Yeah. It's the one thing we all have in common.
It's the one thing we all have in common. And so, it is the concept of, are you cheating death? Are you, just a rich dude? And so there's so much about the income inequality. There's so much about, there being a list of billionaires, right, that are trying to use their money to prolong their lives, right? And where there are people that are just struggling to put food on the table, let alone, get hooked up to all these machines and track themselves and really dedicate their entire life for this. So he spends about $2.5 million a year just on this. So he is tested. He does genetic testing. He takes like 150 supplements a day. Can you imagine? So
Wow.
all of this stuff, he's got this protocol where he wakes up at 4:30 in the morning and he turns on like a UV light. So it looks like it gives him vitamin D in his bathroom. And he has this regimen. It's very, very, very disciplined, very, very strict. And he seems to love it. And he's literally aging backwards. One of the things I thought was really funny is I looked online about, does this guy have sex? Like, is he dating? What's happening? Why? Could you imagine if your life is so regimented, is there time for connection? Is there time for a social life? He is really, really, strict that he's not going to go out partying. He goes to bed at 8 p.m. And when his last bite of food is? 11 a.m. 11 a.m. He has a 2,000 calorie diet. He eats the same exact thing every day. And he's vegan, 2,000 calorie diet, done by 11 a.m. because it impacts his sleep, his ability to fall asleep at 8 or 8:30. And so he's been measuring for years where he has like an entire year of like perfect sleep scores.
Oh, wow. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
like there is some benefit here. And so at some point he has a woman, her name is Kate. I am really trying to figure out who the hell is this Kate woman. Are they banging? What's happening? And she had, like she's been with him since the beginning. She is the second person to follow this strict protocol and kind of devote her life to this. So they're kind of doing it together.
Ask, yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you would have
but
to.
She is the chief marketing officer, and she had the suggestion, why don't you publish all of your statistics and all of the results online and just open it up to the public? And at first, nobody was responding. And then all of a sudden it got picked up and it has gone around the world, around the world, around the world. So I've got to share this.
I am so about his dating. With this.
Oh my God, Danielle, he has scheduled sex. No real partner that we can tell. And so I found online, he posted this on Twitter /X last year about what he shares on first dates. Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
Imagine. And okay, he put, expectations are important. What I share on first dates. Number 1, 11 a.m. dinner. Number 2, 8:30 p.m. bedtime. Number 3, no pillow talk. Number 4, you sleep alone. Number 5, and this is his big one, no small talk, really don't care.
You got to love somebody who knows what they want in life.
I mean,
sounds like a real, I mean, no, it's definitely not a match for me, I will say. But
number 6, Tom doesn't have to worry quite yet. Yeah, there's 10 of them. Number 6, no sunny vacations, because too much, it'll impact his skin. Number 7, scheduled sex. Number 8, veggie daddy. Number 9, must give plasma. And number 10, you're not my number 1 priority. And then he put, unsure why I'm still single. I mean, he's very tongue in cheek about this.
Mm-hmm.
I think one thing that I find so interesting about him, he's really self-aware. And so he even sells this olive oil now, and it's called snake oil because people think he's a charlatan or people think he is just some crazy person. But I think even just this whole concept of being measured and being so rigid every single day, they're just like, are you living a life if you are under this rigidity?
I think some people do derive joy in that way. I don't personally. I'm like the opposite of that, frankly, but I think there are people in life who find joy in discipline because it gives them a perception of certainty and control in a world where things are rather uncertain and uncontrollable. And so if I can control all of these things around me or what I'm doing, then I can sleep at night.
But I wonder about the control thing, though, because there's so many of us, you and I talked about this privately today, that I'm a total control freak where you're more go with the flow, and even just the rigidity of trying to control your own destiny, where people are like, I hope you get hit by a bus and this is all the joke's on you, and who knows? This literally is unprecedented. And he is aging backwards. So I think right now he's about 48. And I think his, I don't know what it is, but like his organs have different ages of what they are. Like your organs don't age at the same rate, like of each other or as you. And so he has like a 37-year-old heart and an 18-year-old something or other boner. I have no idea. Like they literally track how many erections he gets every night.
No kidding. That's hilarious.
Oh my goodness.
I think it's interesting because, yeah, what I find really fascinating about this is the desire to know that intimate detail.
What do you
You
mean?
know, like that so okay, I got the metabolic
Scale.
oh my gosh, scale. I'm like, what weighs you? The scale. And so and I've done this before at the gym with the trainer, and it measures your body weight of every limb and your trunk, and it tells you how much water you have, and it'll take the data on your phone. So it'll tell you about your sleep patterns and things like that. And my metabolic age is 8 years older than my actual age.
Oh my
Right. So
God.
I'm looking at this and I'm like, whoa, dude. Like I thought I would have a little weight to lose here post COVID that
Unsubscribe.
I've been dragging my feet here post COVID, not gonna lie. But I mean, when I saw that, I was like, wow, I have to make some changes now. And I think that there's value to knowing a certain level of what's really going on and not turning a blind eye to it, which I think is a big problem, especially here in America. But how much information is enough information, and spontaneous cancers, other getting hit by a bus, like whatever. I mean, there are other things that threaten life that aren't just metabolic age. So the vigilance to go, to reverse the metabolic age, great. But to live forever, to not die, that goal to me borders on, I don't know, unhealthy. That to me, it seems a little unhealthy to try to strive for something like that. But I appreciate it for the good of humanity, and I don't want him to get hit by a bus. I'd love for this guy to live to 150 years old. Like, that would be amazing. Um, it would tell us a lot about us and our habits, which I do think our habits are what are killing us most of the time. And we know that, so I don't see why people are hating on him, but I think that I can respectfully disagree with that goal being a goal that we should applaud. I think that's where, letting people do what they should do for themselves is one thing, but to encourage it, I think maybe also just contributes to this, perfectionism idea of your life isn't that good unless, I had a conversation with after we had dance, I told you we went ice skating. And the other mom, we're talking and she's like, yeah, well, I think that I want to try these different things and I want to go these different directions. And I want to, pursue all this stuff, but I like being at home and, being with my family. I have two choices as a recipient of that information. I can be like, girl, you better go live your life, you know,
Uh-huh.
or I could be like, yeah, I think it's honorable what you're doing as a mom, staying home and raising your child. I don't do that. We talked about the trad wives too, right? And I was
We
telling
love
her about
Broadway.
that. Yeah. And I was telling her about that. And it's like, live your life. But if this becomes a mantra and a hill to die on, and you're on a soapbox, and all the yes men around you just keep telling you that this is the best thing ever, that's dangerous. That is a cult like issue of groupthink, which, like we talked about slightly in a different conversation. We're talking about all the conversations, but I think it always kind of leads back to it always kind of leads back to this idea of what is the goal for this person? And if he already had suicidal tendencies, I don't know. It feels a little scary to me to have a black and white view of whether life can be good only if I can live the longest or I can reverse my aging.
But that's
But
why
I
I
do have,
think it is such an interesting question because, I was looking at biohacking. So biohacking is the practice of like optimizing every single aspect of your life to live better, to feel better, to, think better and everything happens that way. And I was thinking about the difference of, for women, it's anti-aging is really female and typically skincare. And biohacking is predominantly a male, kind of associated with a male and often alpha male kind of thought process of optimizing. And I was wondering, like, why is it biohacking for men, but women, it's you cannot age, you cannot look like you aged. And I don't know if I'm conflating the two, but I just thought it was an interesting perspective around biohackers, which, in many cases is a really great thing, to make better choices, um, to make better choices and be cognizant and be intentional about everything that you do. I do think that level of rigidity. I am somebody that had struggled with disordered eating and body dysmorphia and orthorexia, which is like when you overdo working out, or meal prep and those kind of things, where you go on the extreme measure. So I have to be careful of the rigidity part because I have been there. That obsessive, kind of led to eating disorders for me. And I don't know, so many people kind of make it a derivative of like, the derivative is, well, he's just a white privileged man that has the time and the money to do this. And really his fight on this is, let me prove what I can prove. Like, I'm going as far as I possibly can, and I'm not making anybody else do it. But what my hope is that as people do join and decide to do this, then if more people want to be tested for this, then those prices and those accessibility will come down and it will be more accessible. That's where I think this gets so interesting.
Oh, yeah. And I agree with you. I think, his point is very valid. Like, even if, is it right that some people have more privilege than others? No, that's not right. It just is. I think that when we start trying to tell people they're right or wrong because of some reality that they're experiencing, it's just unhelpful. If this person has the financial ability and the psychological wherewithal to go through this process and to share the data, right? Because you said like he agreed to share it at some point, but that didn't seem to be the original intention of it. But if he has found that, oh, not only can I do this for myself, but I'm willing to share this data with others, like, I'm glad people do stuff like that. It's great. It's, do I have to agree with everything they're doing? No, I don't. I don't have to agree with everything to appreciate some things. And I certainly am not going to step in the shoes of someone that I cannot, in fact, empathize with. I've never been a rich tech bro that made millions of dollars on an exit, right? Like, how am I going to place myself in a position to challenge this person on that when I've never actually been that person? And I think that that's where sometimes it's like, let's let go of that part of it. Now, at the same time, you brought up a really interesting point, and I think it's worth, bringing out in the open. In order to be a beautiful woman that looks like she's not aging, a few things have to be true for you too. You have to have access to this money. You have to have the chefs and the doctors and the trainers and the nannies to make sure the kids are still living and surviving while you're doing all of these perfectionistic things to your body. Does it make you wrong? No, it makes you different. And if your whole purpose in life is to be a screen actress and you bring a lot of joy to a lot of people being a beautiful screen actress, and you can achieve that for 30 years rather than 20 by a few, you know, procedures or whatever, great, good for you. But if we're going to tell everyone else that that's the gold standard of what we're all supposed to be, that's where the problem is.
But that's the
And
thing, like a famous, beautiful actress, just by her virtue of being a public facing person, that is sending the signal as, like look at Nicole Kidman. Like when you look at her face, she's gorgeous, but it doesn't look entirely natural at this point, and I know
right,
we're not supposed to comment on, women and aging and all of that, but there's something that's like, like it's obvious that she has had work done. And so it does set the signal that this is the gold standard. And I think that is where, we as females are like, I need to look like that. Like I cannot wait to get a facelift. I cannot wait until I could drop 25 grand and get my face picked up, because I cannot stand to look at myself aging. And it is a sad concept of like aging is like the ultimate worst thing that can happen. Like we don't factor in wisdom. We don't factor in, I think our assumption is as you age, your body's going to break down, your organs are going to break down, your mind is hopefully, will stay engaged. But if it doesn't, that is very common too. Like it doesn't feel like an exciting trip to Fiji.
right, right. But I think that, it's like the wealthy men are pursuing the hacking. I'll call it whatever we want. And it's the same thing. And maybe something is synthetic, but all of these supplements are synthetic, right? Like, so a woman does a surgery that's, plastic, that's fake. A man takes these supplements, they're synthetic supplements. Like they are fake supplements made to do the things that the real chemicals do, right? So they're all man-made, right? They're the distinction, I think, is that we judge women that do it. And then for the men that do it, we're like, oh, hacking your body. Thank you so much for hacking your body to, to help us all learn more about ourselves. But like, what if this person took that discipline and that ability to hyper focus in on that and did something like study, astrophysics or curing cancer or eradicating poverty or
Well, that's the other thing. Like, what if you took your money to cure cancer? And it's almost like a juxtaposition that what if we could eradicate cancer or minimize the chance of cancer by living better? Like now the studies have just come out that there is a big link to alcohol contributing to 9 different types of cancers. Like 1 out of 6 women who get breast cancer, in many cases, or 1 out of 6 of women who get breast cancer, they find that alcohol is a contributing factor. And so it's just, I think what I understand about Bryan Johnson and his perspective is the thought is like, let's treat after you're sick. And he's saying, what if we live better? What if we, lived where our bodies were telling us what to eat, not our minds? And it's almost like he's kind of demoted his mind and promoted his body. And I don't know. I wonder what it is like to be free of your mind.
I was going to say, I don't know that you can. And I think that's where, to me, I don't know if I buy that completely. I just don't know.
Playing God, is it playing God?
But also, like, is it even realistic and possible that you can disconnect the brain, which is the central nervous system for all the other nerves that hit in. I had my gallbladder removed after my youngest son was born because I started having gallstones, which is very common in women, especially women that are geriatric pregnancy, as I was, according to my doctor. But okay, I also suffer from minor scoliosis in my mid back. And so I have a lot of tension and pinching in some of my skeletal, whatever, my muscles and things like that. And I have a chiropractic doctor friend who's like, girl, you never needed to get that gallbladder removed because I could have helped you just by keeping you aligned and I believe that that is in fact true. So I think that there's room for both. And I think that saying that you can disconnect, saying that your organ health is only related, that your organ health is separate from your mind's control, I don't think that's true at all. I think that your mind controls everything. But if you've trained your mind to focus on your physical health, then your mind can connect with those organs in a way that maybe other people are not able to do, like me, right? So, yes, I think that being able to focus in on that is amazing. But to say that you're demoting your mind or that you're putting your mind second, no, you are channeling your focus, you're channeling your intention to that thing, and you're manifesting the result of this metabolic reversal of your age. That's what's happening to me. So I think it's ultimately a good thing, but it can go too far if you focus too much, like the exclusion of human connection or only connecting to the people that sign the dotted line of I only work with you this way. I'm only gonna, we talked about how you could have an intentional conversation with someone about the relationship that you want, like the friendship that you want.
Right.
And I had met a woman about a year or two ago, and I met her in a nail salon and like just loved her. We immediately just kind of bonded sitting there in this nail salon. So we end up hanging out, and I can make friends with a brick wall pretty much. And so we end up going out a few times. And she says to me, "Really like hang out with you, and I want to hang out more." And I'm like, "Yes, me too." Well, her intention and idea of more was like way more frequent than what my idea and intention was based on my limitations. Being a business owner with a 5-year-old and these kids, these teenagers, and all her kids are grown, and she's, able to, both her and her husband are entrepreneurs. They have a lot more freedom. So it was like our intention to do this relationship was the same, but our idea of what that looked like was different. So when he says to someone, I'm only going to have this relationship of this type, he's keeping a lot of people out because ultimately what happened is that she needed a lot more attention than I could give her. And I think she thought that I was just a flaky woman that said she wanted the thing that she also wanted, but I didn't really want it. Like maybe I was a liar in her eyes or something. And so I think that like the connection factor of humanity contributes to health and longevity. And I think one of the reasons my grandmother's been able to sustain so long, I mean, my grandfather died when I was 18 years old. So she's lived alone for, I mean, at this point, how old am I now? Yeah, over
doing
20,
math,
25, 20, 30 years, 30 years, right? So for 30 years, she's lived alone. But she's always at church and she's always helping her neighbors and she stays engaged. She's always on the phone with one of her daughters or, just yakking away. And I think that that has value, not just the things you put into your body. Like I said, I mean, she's a Southern grandma. She eats like bacon and eggs, and like white bread, like literally the things that we're not supposed to be eating because they're allegedly aging us. And that's almost her entire diet with no veggies and no like, organic produce from Whole Foods.
Yeah. I think the connection piece of it in this documentary with Bryan Johnson, and you know, he's been really open about this. He had been excommunicated from his family, but one of his sons went to live with him. And I think they're like two peas in a pod. So he is also following the protocols. So his son is like 18. And, you know, during the filming, his son was about to leave for college. So they only had a limited amount of time. And so he, you know, like Bryan would cry a lot, you know, thinking about losing that relationship that he built with his son, not losing, but like not having access for him going away. And where I think this became really interesting. And again, moving from like his Mormon faith, this Mormon religion that obviously has a set of rules, right? Like any tribe, like any group, there is cult-like tendencies, right? Whether you think it's a cult or not is up to you.
Right.
And where I think this movement, this blueprint is what it's called, it is attracting so many people, so intrigued that it has all the makings of a cult. Whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know. Like it, and they even reference it. But I also feel like there is something really powerful about finding your people. And like feeling like these are people that think like you support each other. I don't know, like the cult like tendencies. So I think it has sparked a movement all across the globe where he would post something on social media. Hey, I'm going to go run up a trail. If you're interested, and there'd be like 9 people there. And now there are like hundreds and thousands that will show up, you know, and people all over the globe will be showing up for just living life better. And I think it begs the question around connection, that how much joy and peace can we feel? Like we don't have anything if we don't have our health. But if we have our health plus connection, like all bets are off. Like life is better, right? Life is is so much better and more vivid.
And maybe, you know, I mean, I think that's a really good point because in the Think and Grow Rich, speaking of snake oil salesmen, you know, Napoleon Hill wrote the Think and Grow Rich book, and it's a big controversy, right? And there's either people who just believe it is one of the greatest, if not the greatest books ever written on how to create the life you want. And then there are other people that say, oh, he never interviewed any of those people and it was all a big hoax and all whatever. The truth, in my view, doesn't really matter. If you can get value from what this person says and you can follow those steps and it brings success in your life, then does it really matter whether it's true or not? If people come into his community and they don't need, I think for him, the connection I was at least triggered thinking about was the dating. But you don't have to have a dating relationship or a romantic relationship to have connection, obviously. So like, you know, I think that's actually true. And I don't want to conflate that because I don't believe that you need that to be, I mean, she doesn't have that. She hasn't had that for 30 years, right? Like that was kind of the whole point. So if he has this tribe of people that give him the connection and he has health, I mean, your point is 100% true. What else do you really need? Especially if you already have all the money in the world.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the part, like I think about him being suicidal, and very often it's because you don't feel connected. You don't feel worthy of whatever role you have. And I know that like with CEOs and founders, I mean, there is a massive amount of depression and alcohol and addiction that it happens because you're so isolated, you know, like you are put on this pedestal and you're like, I don't really feel, you know, and even if you do,
right,
it doesn't feel like it is in alignment with who you are. And so I think where the other criticism of him is that he is looking at profits, right? Like he wants to he wants to be the guru. He wants to be like, I've heard him say, I want to be in the history books that people are talking about 100 years from now. You know, you can call me crazy all you want, you know, and maybe I am, but I think I'm onto something and I'm sacrificing myself for you, you know? And so he is getting these massive followers. He is, you know, caring about likes and shares and, you know, YouTube views and all of those things. And yeah, I bet there's a lot of narcissism that comes along in general with people in this place, but he's pushing the envelope for what's possible. I think the difference is when it comes to somebody else's detriment and that we don't know, like all of this is a giant question mark. And he's kind of putting himself first for figuring out what this looks like. And so I'm on board. I've got my popcorn. I'm all about finding out what this is and waiting, not doing.
Well, I'm going all in. I mean, one of the things that I love so much about you, Allison, is you go deep. You go deep, and I love to go deep. And so for me, when you brought this up, I mean, it was the twinkle in my eye, I think, where you were like, let's have a different conversation because this type of stuff fascinates me. And I see it a lot.
Watch the documentary?
I'm going to watch it.
You're going to watch it tonight. I know you are. Like after your date night?
After date night. Yeah, we have date night. So maybe tomorrow. Yeah. But I mean, being in the entrepreneur circles, like, it's almost like if you don't embrace some level of this hacking idea, then you're going to fall victim to an addiction, or it's like an entrepreneurial mind is somewhat of an obsessive mind.
Yeah.
And that obsession is what makes it, it's what makes some people very successful, right?
Yeah. You got to be a little bit crazy, right?
You do. You really do. And I think that entrepreneurs that are real and know, you know, they are self-aware enough to know, I'm going to be an outcast. I'm not going to fit in. They probably never really have. And it sounds like he struggled as a youth being an outsider to this very strict culture. And it's almost like he's found a way to validate himself, honestly, to all the people that, you know, maybe thought he wasn't worthy. And so that's where I think that's where some of the concern of, is this about perfectionism? Is this about proving worthiness? Is this about showing that I'm the best, that I always was, that I always will be, you know? And that's why I want to go deeper into it, because I don't want to make assumptions about that, but I just feel that that can be, you just have to be mindful of all these things, you know? You have to,
What a human way to talk about a superhuman feat. What a great way to wrap up our conversation today, because I think it is putting the humanity back in what he's doing of needing validation. But he could really be onto something. And I am here for the ride. I'm strapped in. I can't wait to hear what you think when you watch this. And I'm so grateful to have you on, Danielle, and kind of unpack this live. I wasn't sure, like when we started, I was like, this could be a total shit show where we're just, you know.
I think my sound is kind of a shit show here, but sorry.
I just think having this conversation live, it's such a conversation starter and something so interesting to consider of, would you want to live longer? And I imagine if you could be healthy, if you could have your mind intact, if your body was intact and you were able to have more time with your children and you're healthier, you're all healthier, would it be worth it? And it would be a totally different game. But I think in my mind, I think it's so like the chances of that are so low, which is ridiculous, you know, because I think that our generations before us, that wasn't the case. I mean, we're eating processed food. We're eating, we're there's 40% of Americans, I think, are obese. I mean, it just is, heart disease is the number one killer. What if it wasn't so? And so I'm all for an alternative way. We are the Reinvention Room. I love an unconventional path to a better future, if it can work. And I'm here for it.
Me too. I love all the unconventional paths. So I'm rooting for him. Honestly, I really am.
I am too. Well, thank you so much, Danielle.
Yes, thanks for having me, Allison.